Now, a little warning before we begin, there may be a minor spoiler or two in this video for the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett. I'll just be referencing some cool imagery, basically, it's nothing major. But if you haven't seen the episode yet and you don't want anything ruined at all, you may want to skip the video. Okay, so the cool imagery I'm of course referring to comes to us at the beginning of the episode while Boba Fett is still in the bacta tank and having the dream or the flashback. And we're taken to the arena on Geonosis and we get that classic and iconic scene from episode 2 where young Boba Fett picks up his father's helmet and puts it to his forehead. Only this time we get a slightly different view of it, we get a different angle, and we can actually see Boba's face reflected in the visor. And I think it's just a really great way to open up the series and to kind of set the tone and to show us this defining moment in Boba Fett's life as we get a show called The Book of Boba Fett, implying it's really going to be about the life of this character. But of course it has led a lot of people to do some speculating that we may actually see the character who is responsible for removing Jango's head from his shoulders in this series. There are a lot of people speculating we may now see Mace Windu because they decided to include this scene. And of course people were speculating about this even before the episode came out, and there's no doubt that Mace Windu is an important character to Boba Fett. He killed his father, as I was just talking about, and we even see in the Clone Wars he attempts to assassinate him a couple times, so it makes sense that if somehow Mace Windu had survived the events of Revenge of the Sith, that Boba Fett would seek him out and try to finish him off once and for all. Either way, this idea that Mace Windu could still be alive 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, or during the time period of the Mandoverse, shall we call it, it does lead to a series of very interesting and fun questions. The first of which I think is, did George Lucas in any way, shape, or form mean to imply that Mace Windu did survive that day, that he survived having his arm cut off by Anakin, the Force lightning of Palpatine, and then being yeeted out a window and falling several hundred feet? And the answer to that is no. I'm sure Lucas intended to imply that Mace Windu had very much died in that moment, or in that scene, or as soon as he hit the ground, I should say. And that's the thing. We don't see him technically die, but what was Lucas supposed to do? Was he supposed to literally show him impacting and splatting on the concrete far below? Of course, he's not going to do that. Though we can, of course, make the argument we have seen plenty of other characters take great falls that were implied to have killed them, and yet they came back to life, with perhaps the greatest example being Darth Maul. And so that of course brings us to the question of, could Mace Windu have survived all that? And not only do I think the answer is yes, he could have, but I think it's almost likely that he would have survived that. I mean, yes, he lost an arm and he got electrocuted, and he may have lost consciousness on the way down, but if he didn't, this is a well-trained Jedi Master. This is the most powerful Jedi in the Order, according to Anakin. And so I think there's every chance he got his wits about him, and he slowed down his fall, and he landed on his feet to some extent, and survived. The question then is, what does Mace Windu do next if he does survive that fall? And what kind of condition is he really in at this point? Because I have to figure that, well, Palpatine is a pretty smart guy. He's going to send some clone troopers down to make sure that the body of Mace Windu is recovered. He's not just going to assume he died, or at least I would hope Palpatine is smart enough or wise enough to make sure that he has the most powerful Jedi of the Order killed. The question then is, what exactly does Mace Windu do for the next 30 years or so until he presumably shows up in the Book of Boba Fett to be, I'm going to guess, killed by Boba Fett? Now, would he go into hiding? That doesn't seem too likely, considering he's probably pretty upset that he just defeated Palpatine, unless Palpatine let him win. We could certainly have that discussion. But from his point of view, he no doubt feels like he just defeated Palpatine and got cheated by Anakin. So wouldn't he just try to go and do it again? Wouldn't he try to challenge Palpatine again and kill him once and for all? The reason why, of course, Yoda and Obi-Wan go into hiding is they don't think they can defeat Palpatine, and we see that Yoda does lose to Palpatine in the battle during Revenge of the Sith. So it really is a good question. What would Mace Windu do next if he happened to survive? I personally just have a really hard time, or would have a hard time believing he's done virtually nothing in those 30 years, that yet another Grand Master or another Master Jedi just went into hiding and did who knows what during that time. At least with Yoda and Obi-Wan, there was a plan. They didn't just go into hiding or exile for the sake of it. They went into hiding so that they could one day train Luke and or Leia to defeat Palpatine and to defeat Vader as well. So they had a plan, but they also knew that Anakin had offspring. So what exactly is Mace Windu's plan? Did he give up on the Jedi and just go be a bounty hunter? Did he maybe settle down and live a peaceful life until somehow discovered by Boba Fett? I mean, there are possibilities here, but most of them would be disappointing possibilities that, again, Mace Windu did not immediately try to get back in the fight and try to win a fight he had already won before by defeating Palpatine the first time around. However, there is another possibility altogether here. There's nothing that says Boba Fett has to encounter Mace Windu, assuming he survived, that he has to encounter him during the present tense of the show. Now, I think that's what a lot of people are kind of expecting or would want to see. They would want to see an older Boba Fett versus an older Mace Windu. But we could go all the way back to shortly after the events of Revenge of the Sith, when a much younger Boba Fett, and you can throw pretty much anybody in the suit, and you could even use the voice of Daniel Logan, who voiced him in Clone Wars, and you could have him be the one who actually finally kills Mace Windu sometime after those events. And maybe when Mace was about to go after Palpatine, maybe Mace was about to kind of save the day, and it's Boba Fett who kind of is responsible for Palpatine being able to avoid that second attack and go on to, well, remain ruler or emperor of the galaxy. Doing it this way would, of course, answer the question or avoid the dilemma of having to explain just what the heck Mace Windu did for those 30 years. But again, I don't think that's the way most people want to see it go down. I think they want to see, again, present tense Boba Fett against the older, kind of haggard Mace Windu who somehow survived and has been doing who knows what in the meantime. But then again, you still have to ask, would it really serve the story to bring Mace Windu back only to be killed by Boba Fett? And I'm assuming he would be, or maybe they'll make peace. I have no idea. I don't think people would really like the idea that after all this time that Boba Fett finds Mace Windu and then they kind of come to peaceful terms with each other. I think that would really ruin the idea of the character. So we do have to ask, does it really serve the story to bring Mace Windu back only to have an encounter with Boba Fett? Now, if they make a good deal of the show, or they devote a good deal of time to the series, in the series to developing or reminding us of the hatred Boba has from Mace Windu, and he somehow has clues and tracks him down and ends up killing him, well, I think that could work, but I really don't think, and I could certainly be wrong, I don't really think that's what the series is going to be about. I think it really is going to focus on him, building up his new criminal empire, and I'm sure he's going to encounter some rivals along the way that he ends up killing. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. It has been a rumor out there that he kind of goes on a little bit of a vengeance spree during the series. So it kind of fits, it kind of doesn't, to bring in Mace Windu again to be killed off by Boba Fett after surviving all this time. The other question we have to address is, would Samuel L. Jackson come back for this? And I think the answer to that is yes. He has said in the past that he would love to come back to Star Wars and play Mace Windu again. Would he come back just to be killed off by Boba Fett? Well, probably. I have no idea how vested he is in his character and what happens to him, or if he just likes playing the character. Anyway, my kind of closing thoughts on all this is, I don't really think it was intended, having that scene in the first episode was intended to really set up a Mace Windu return. I think it's just a very pivotal moment, a very defining moment in his life, and of course they kind of remind us of it. They remind us of what shaped his destiny, that his father died that day, and who knows what becomes of him if Jango doesn't die. Now, likely he goes on to be a bounty hunter anyway, since that's what Jango was doing, but who knows? It is the moment that defined him, so it doesn't really, I don't think, mean to imply that Mace Windu is going to show up just because Mace is the one who created that defining moment. That said, if done well, I don't really have an issue with Mace Windu showing up in the series. I think it's a little odd. I don't know. It depends on how it would be handled. And once upon a time, I would have probably laughed at the idea that they would do something like that. But that was before Luke Skywalker showed up at the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, which just goes to show they will do things that are very, very unexpected. They're not afraid to bring in some heavy hitters in these series. So it's not impossible, and I'm not against it. It just would need to be done well. I would hate to just bring Mace Windu back to have Boba Fett kill him. Just feels like, why did you do that? And now you have to explain what has Mace Windu been doing for all this time. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think. Would you like to see Mace Windu in the Book of Boba Fett? Do you think it's a possibility? Or would it just be ridiculous? Is it silly to bring back yet another dead character in a series about a character that was kind of brought back from the dead already? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.